Welcome, everyone. It's the Bonus Points Last Week in Rugby series. Once again, I'm your host, TJ Olsen, and very interested to talk about all the drama over the weekend, as it was a weekend full of upsets. Just before we get stuck into talking about the rugby last week, I would like to mention that this week is USA Women's Rugby Week, a week dedicated to women involved in the game of rugby and also to encourage fans to show their support for the Women's Eagles as they ready themselves for the Rugby World Cup in 2021. So on November 18th and the 21st, we have the USA Women's Rugby team playing their Stars and Stripes match, very similar to the possibles, probables that the Black Ferns played. So don't forget to check out this two-game series for free via Flow Rugby this week. So definitely make the most of that. But with that in mind, let's get into talking about the games, and we have to tune in our regular analysts. Welcome back to Vita Halafia and James Tesserero. Gentlemen, how are we doing? Weekend full of crazy rugby.
Yeah, that's what you can call it that.
Oh, man. James, how we doing?
Good, mate. I have a new hero.
Yeah. Hey, look, you're just poking the
that
bear.
background is, oh, man. Like, there's so much that I want to sit there and just be mad at it, but you just can't, because he was just such a beast, and his facials just make just such a great week for it. Man, it's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's just jump in. We'll just go straight into the dissecting from last week, and first off, as usual, a rapid recap of the Mitre 10 Cup. So Counties Manukau, they finish off their season with a win over Southland Stags. That's awesome for Counties to get that win, 25-17. Northland get the win over Waikato. That was a big disappointing one, but supposedly Rennie Ranger ripped up in that game. So 28-17. Shout out to Ponsonby's Johnny Cooper for a great season with his hometown team. Wellington smashed the Turbos 31-5, no surprise there, to save themselves from relegation. That's a big one. Tasman beat Otago 26-20. Bay of Plenty beat North Harbour 37-33. Hawke's Bay win a tight one against Taranaki 34-33. And the upset of the week, Canterbury take down number one seed Auckland 34-33. So this week we won't do too much of a recap or a game of the week as we have too much to dissect in the test match, but I will inform our listeners who will be watching this final this weekend. We've got Otago versus Northland and Hawke's Bay versus Taranaki. That's in the championship division. And then in the premiership division, we've got Tasman and Bay of Plenty and Auckland versus Waikato. So those two games are going to be the great ones to watch. But boys, just before we jump in, I want to ask you guys, who are you most excited to watch? I'll go to you, James, first. What game are you excited to watch the most?
I'm probably looking forward to the Auckland and Waikato match. I had a look at the Auckland highlights, and I haven't watched a lot of Mitre 10 Cup through the season, but the attacking style of Auckland was pretty incredible. Mm-hmm. And then Northland as well. Like I didn't realise that Renee Ranger was back playing for them. They had a few guys that I'd seen. They've got a fullback who's played a little bit of Super Rugby, and they've got a few guys that look like they're kind of returning, kind of aging out veterans, and they were very good in their win. So probably looking forward to Northland and Auckland.
Okay, cool. What about you, Holla?
Man, bro, obviously the Auckland Waikato game I'm emotionally invested in. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. But bro, Hawke's Bay Taranaki, G. I mean, 2 weeks in a row you got to play each other pretty much. So I'm really looking forward to that, to see how it goes. It's up in the air for me in regards to the exciting match. I think the Hawke's Bay Taranaki game, for me, is what I'm looking forward to watching, mostly because I haven't...
You know who I'm back. You know how I'm backing in that one. I got to back my boy Ash Dixon.
I know. Like James said last week's episode, he was looking forward to watching an All Blacks game because it's an unemotional event for him. That's probably the game that I'm looking forward to, because the Auckland Waikato game, look, I don't need 3 weeks of disappointment, okay? 2 weeks is hard enough. 3 weeks, I'm just not looking forward to it.
Yeah, definitely. All right, well, let's finish off with that, and let's get into the test match. And a lot of fans were excited for the first matchup between the All Blacks and the Pumas, but they got more than they bargained for. They witnessed a game of rugby that was full of heart, full of passion, and a lot of handbags being thrown. So a lot of punches, a lot of slaps. It was frigging chaos. But there's a lot to dissect here. So I want to talk about what this Pumas win does for the game overall before we even talk about the game, the refereeing, all that. I think this is fantastic for the game of rugby. Although I'm a massive All Blacks fan, everyone loves an underdog story. When you see a team like Argentina suffer so much from COVID-19, having barely any preparation, consider they've been a competitive team for decades, but haven't been able to get over the hump against the ABs and for a lot of teams. I'm loving this win. So, James, I'll come to you first. What does this win do for Argentina and the sport of rugby in general?
Well, it's obviously good for the sport. I think Argentina are ranked about 10th. New Zealand are ranked about 2nd. And anytime we have essentially more Tier 1 teams or we have Tier 2s that can beat Tier 1s, it's a good thing for the sport. Mate, Argentina are a quality side. They probably don't beat the Wallabies, All Blacks or Springboks that often, but they never really lose by much. They play with
it's always a tight one, eh? Like it's so tight.
Yeah, they always play with a heap of passion. They always front up, and they obviously have a heap of passion playing for their jersey and their country. So I enjoyed that, mate.
Hulla, what do you think?
Yeah, man, 100%. Great for the game. And the best part is they were led around the paddock from the get-go with a great captain. And I think that the world got to see that it doesn't matter, if you're top ranked or down the bottom of the lower ranks. You know what I mean? You put a bunch of champion, like a champion team together that's led around the field and that can really lead on the paddock and off the paddock, then anything's possible, man. Like yourself, I was disappointed, but at the same time, what a win. The Pumas deserved it, and I was very happy to see an underdog win.
Well, talking about leaders, let's talk about the coaching staff first. So we're going to start with Ian Foster because that's the first man we have to start with. The MO, like we said last week, the MO for the All Blacks choosing a head coach has always been the same. They choose the candidate from inside the circle. They promote one of their assistant coaches. But now, after just 5 matches, Ian Foster is now under the microscope. I've always liked Fozzie. I've always said he's a great coach. Like when he was with the Chiefs, when he coached the junior All Blacks, when he was an assistant coach for the All Blacks, I always liked him. But from the beginning, I never thought he was the man for the job. I always thought Razor was the best successor on paper. And now a lot of people are calling for Fozzie's head, calling for him to be replaced in short tenure. The media has obviously caught fire with this, and they're calling for Fozzie's head as well. But I think you've got to look at both sides of the coin here. On one hand, Fozzie's a brand new head coach, has a brand new coaching staff. They've had to work around so many variables with COVID. But on the other hand, James, you mentioned it when we were talking about it during the week. They looked so flat. They looked frazzled. They looked underprepared. And there were 2 stats that I'd like to point out about this victory. The ABs have won 2 of their last 5 games. So obviously 1 draw, 2 wins, 2 losses. And this was Argentina's first victory, with the closest one being from 1985 when they drew with the All Blacks. This is the only win they've gotten over the ABs. And the last time the ABs have lost 2 games in a row, 2011. So that's 9 years ago. So my opinion is simple. Although I have my grievances, and a lot of people do have with Fozzie, you got to wait until the Tri-Nations are over. I say personally give him a shot next season with a regular test match schedule, see what he does with regular situations, and then make a calculated decision then. Don't just cut off his head after 5 test matches. But let's talk to you guys first. Hulla, what should the All Blacks do about their coaching situation?
Look, man, I mean, this isn't the first time in professional sports where teams that have an acronym for winning in large clubs and are world renowned for winning have had coaches or management that have underperformed, given what's happened on the field. So this is nothing new in professional sports. I think it's new for New Zealand sports, given that this is their national team, their national sport, and this is completely new to them. So, the reaction is fair, I think. I think it's, you wouldn't be an All Blacks fan and calling for his head or being over emotional about it. Do you know what I mean? Like this is just a normal reaction. I'm like yourself. I think we need to take into consideration like the mitigating factors for the season. COVID-19, 5 international test matches in a row with quarantining having to happen. So on a team culture level, there's not so much you can control in regards to how each individual player of 45 of your squad is feeling, where their head's at. That's an unattainable task, I think. And, to think otherwise would be quite foolish, I think. Having said that, though, there is some leadership lacking. I think when you see it on the field, then it's definitely happening off field. that needs to be discussed. And that obviously comes under the coaching staff and especially the head coach, Ian Foster.
Yeah, definitely. James, what have you got to add to that?
I agree with all that. I think when the All Blacks have been dominant, they've been remarkable in how consistent they are in fronting up mentally. And that sounds like an obvious thing, but for you to play, like the All Blacks went a calendar year undefeated. They went 2 or 3 years with only 1 or 2 losses. They had that huge streak of wins. How many did they win in a row?
18.
Oh, it was something
18,
ridiculous like
so
that.
for you to go 18 matches without laying an egg mentally is actually quite remarkable. And that was one of the kind of real strong things the All Blacks did well, was making sure that any time you wore the jersey, you kind of fronted up mentally. What I saw on Saturday was probably one of their flatter performances. And you can talk about how that was the 5th test in 5 weeks, but anytime your team comes out a little bit flat, people will look at the coach and ask the question about whether these players are really playing for the coach. And a couple more flat performances like that, and Foster will get under a bit of pressure. Now, I think Foster has a 2-year contract, doesn't he?
Yeah, I believe so. I've seen contracts go, like, get bought out or get thrown for less. But yeah, I do not hope that the New Zealand Rugby are that crazy just to go. Yeah, it's been 5 test matches during COVID series.
Yeah,
like it'd be horrendous.
So I think you give him the 2 years, and you either decide that after those 2 years, we're happy with the way the All Blacks are going and you re-up him for the World Cup, or after those 2 years you say, let's take another direction for the 2 years into the World Cup.
100%. That's definitely, I think, the way to go. Anything else is a little crass and a little desperate, and they don't need to be desperate right now. Do you know what I mean? It's just been a heck of a year, man. And you know, I think too, like, we're not taking anything away from Argentina. Argentina have always just been the caged beast, right? You put that beast in a cage, someone is going to get found out. It doesn't matter who you are.
For 402 days, it's if you put anything in there for 402 days, someone's going to pop out and want to kill you.
Do you know what I mean? And I think the one thing that I took away was I don't know whether I heard it or read it, but it's like, you know, we're from Argentina. Like, the odds are always against us. We're built for this. We're made for this.
I think that's what Ledesma said in his post-match interview.
And I'm like, that in itself, and that's what happens. And, you know, unlike Australia or New Zealand that have the luxury of this sort of bubble where they were still able to train and whatnot, you know, you put that animal in. The Pumas have, like James said, if they've lost, they haven't been pumped. They've just lost. You know what I mean? And they just weren't. Losing was not in their head on the weekend. They were coming out to win, and that's what happens. Their team was a team comparatively to the All Blacks, which wasn't. And, you know, 9 times out of 10, the team's always going to beat the other.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. So the winning side of the coaches, you've got Mario Ledesma, and you've got coaching consultant, someone we know pretty well, James, after seeing him talk in San Francisco, Michael Cheika. So the thing that I loved the most about this victory for Ledesma specifically is you can really see how much it actually meant to him. He was holding back tears in the coaching box when they won. He choked back tears during his press conference. He's a former test match player for over 80 tests for Argentina. So before we talk about Ledesma, I want to talk about Cheika. So Cheika, obviously former coach of the Wallabies, with Ledesma being his assistant coach during that time. And he had a pretty rough run against the All Blacks. So out of 14 games, he only won, I think, just roughly 20% as a head coach. But you could argue that no coach has spent more time in the modern All Blacks era trying to decipher and figure out how to beat the All Blacks. So, James, I'll come to you first, because you obviously know Cheika pretty well and his coaching style and where he's been. Now that Cheika doesn't have to worry about steering the ship, and like he did with the Wallabies, is he more dangerous now in this consulting role?
Yeah, mate. If you're ever looking for a coach to get a team like frothing at the mouth coming out of the sheds, Cheika's probably the best in the world. So I don't know if he speaks. I don't know how his Spanish is. I think it's actually pretty good. But he would have been in the sheds, absolutely firing the boys up. And for their first test match in more than a year, there's probably not a better coach to get them in that kind of emotional state than Michael
Well, there was a quote that I actually read the other day that said he came up to Mitre or the captain, and he turned around and he said, "What are you guys waiting for? You've got the most vicious blokes on the field. You've got size. You've got hunger. You go out and take it." And then if that's someone coming from outside the camp and coming in and they respect that and they use that as kind of like fueling the fire, man, I would love that every time I'd play any rugby game.
Yeah.
So, all right, Hulla, what are your thoughts on Checker?
Look, as a Wallaby coach, I wasn't a fan of his coaching style. But having said that, he does the attributes that he has, and what I saw at Super Rugby level. Like James said, the Waratahs were pulling things out of their butt. What they were doing, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
When he was the coach, when he first went to the Wallabies, you could see that he had the grunt that I thought the Wallabies lacked for a little while, like post Golden era, like that sort of Dan Herbert, Tim Horan, Jason Little era. I just don't think that he had the backing of Rugby Australia to get the players that he really wanted. That's just a conspiracy theory for me. I don't know how that was.
We need to create our own show of just conspiracy theories, because you pull some good ones out of your ass.
Man, look, I'm way too intentful in I watch way too much and then my mind wanders. What can I say? But look, I think the Pumas are a perfect fit for Chica because, like James said, we've seen it time and time again. As a coach, he's passionate. We don't know what he's saying, but he's not saying nice things. Or if he is, he's very violently telling you them. But if what he's got at Argentina is just that, like I said before, that hungerness and that drive, just to not be disrespectful, but they respect their jersey more than they respect any other jersey, then yeah, Chica's the guy that you want. And I think also, too, him and Ledesma were awesome. I've actually rated Ledesma for quite a while. I think he's a fantastic coach and a fantastic tactician. And we saw like that sort of tacticianship, if that's the word, with Chica's overall understanding of rugby and knowing how to get the best out of the players. That's a deadly, and especially with this Pumas team, man, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with.
Well, let's quickly talk about that. So obviously, Ledesma, he's had quite a successful career as a coach in the top 14 and throughout a lot of different places. He was the coach for the Jaguares for that good finals run. And like I said, they've got a team that had 402 days between test matches, so many COVID cases in their camp, not just around it or some people. They had so many people that tested positive, and obviously this meant so much to him. And a lot of people are commending the players' performance, but saying this game was a big way to unleash a lot of built-up frustration. So in this kind of thought process, Ledesma can prepare his team to stay competitive, but can he keep it consistent? And Hulla, I just want to get you guys to give me, you and James, a quick yes or no answer. Do you think he can stay on this track and keep them competitive through the rest of the Tri-Nations? Okay. James?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I think they're right in this competition.
Okay, cool. All right, well, yeah, that's it for the coaches, but let's talk about the gameplay. So Argentina's gameplay, it wasn't the prettiest gameplay I've ever seen, but I've managed to see a great balance of very speedy parts and then kicking the All Blacks' teeth down their throats. So not many opponents are able to do that consistently throughout 80 minutes. And I could go on and on about stats until the cows come home, but I think the only stat that matters is this one. The team only had one handling error the whole game. I don't even know how that's even freaking possible. It's ridiculous. But the first player I want to talk about, obviously, is the man who scored all their points, Nicolas Sanchez. So this guy was friggin' phenomenal. He kicked all their conversions, all their penalties, regathered his own friggin' chip kick to score a try under the post, and he earned himself through this game the title, the third most points ever scored by an individual in a test against the All Blacks. So he's played in high leverage games before, leading Argentina to a semi-final in 2015, and he's had the chance to do it again in this Tri-Nation. So, Hulla, Argies, they've already played the Wallabies A side, and they've beaten them pretty convincingly, but the Wallabies have their own things to deal with when it comes to those losses. Will Sanchez's style of play work well against the Wallabies, or do you think the Wallabies will find a way to contain it?
It's going to be interesting, man. with O'Connor ruled out for this game, I'm interested to see. I don't think they've named it as of this morning. I hadn't checked the Wallabies if they've been named yet. So it's going to be interesting. I don't think that Sanchez will have that much room to play with for two reasons. Number one, Dave Rennie is a master coach. He's going to shut that down very fast. And number two, I'm very positive they're going to play Hunter Paisami in at 12. And look, and that's the
just shut him down.
That's the play you need, man. And I've been quite vocal that I would like to see Paisami at 12 and Patai at 13. And I think that when they did play them there, they played really good. And Paisami's defense, man, is second to none in Australia. So, look, I think he won't have that much room. And I definitely think that comes down to Dave Rennie. He'll definitely be making sure that he's shut down. So, but having said that, Sanchez is that good that he can make time for himself. He's really good at analyzing defensive play. He's really good at those inside balls. So long as he's got a player on his inside and on his outside, he's always going to be a threat. It doesn't matter what he's done. Ball in hand with him, and he's very unpredictable, and that's what got the All Blacks. So I think it's going to be a super, super competitive, and I'm really interested to see how he fares against the quality Australian outfit.
Okay, well, James, this will lead me into my next question. When it comes to Sanchez, if you're the coach of the Wallabies, are you more nervous about his kicking game and his potential to kick points, or his way to evaluate the field and his passing game?
Mate, probably his kicking for points. On Saturday, he was very good at kind of turning anything inside halfway, any penalties into 3 points. And that kind of changes the way the opposition kind of contests the ball and the way they can pressure at the ruck in terms of line speed, the way they can go hard at the poach. Because if you get it wrong inside
3 points,
their half, it becomes 3 points.
Yeah.
So to be honest, I'd be very, very worried about kind of getting that balance between trying to be disruptive and turn their ball over and not being expensive and giving away penalties.
Yeah, James.
Because you definitely.
You
go,
James,
Hull.
in saying that, do you think there will be a call going down the line to the Lucies, namely Hooper, to just, you got to read the play. Don't we do, because Hooper gets a lot of penalties and that's his hands in on the ruck.
Yeah.
So do you think he's going down the line and he's saying, boys, unless there's sunshine, do not go for that ball? Or is he saying, let's just see how it goes for the first 10, and then after that, there'll be a call made through the trainers to run on the field, be like, that's it?
I actually think it's going to be more territory.
Okay.
So I think the Wallabies are going to go hard at the ruck, go hard at line speed until the Pumas get inside 40 metres, and then I think you'll see some different decisions.
Yeah.
So I think I would expect the Wallabies to have been kind of told this by Rennie all week, that as soon as they cross into goal-kicking distance, take the extra step at the ruck, hands out a little bit earlier, make sure of it before you go for the poach. But I think for the other 60 metres of the field, I think you'll see us go for everything.
All right, let's talk about the loose forwards for Argentina, because obviously they friggin' killed it. They're right behind James's head as one of them. So, and Pablo Mitre is the guy I want to talk about. So he was a force to be reckoned with. And the last couple of years for the Jaguares in Argentina, he's just been killing it. And although he ended up losing the 2019 Super Rugby final, he dominated that game. And he reminded on the weekend to everyone who they're dealing with. So he almost scored a try, which was held up by Mwanga. He was dominant in scrums, made a bunch of great tackles, and his quickness to breakdowns frigging killed us. And he forced so many turnovers. But you could also see the passion just written all over his face. Anything he needed to do, he would do. And you could see as soon as he would run in to back up his own player in a fight, and he would argue with Angus Gardner saying, "I play for my country," one of the other side, you just see it everywhere. He just wanted to play for his country, and he was so passionate about it. But on the other side, you've got Marcos Kremer, and he's 23 years old, and these stats ridiculous. So 14 carries, 1 defender beaten, 28 tackles at a 90% tackle success with 14% dominance in those tackles. And so what I really want to dissect here is everybody was making a big deal about Sam Cane's tackle consistency and how he made 26 tackles at a 100% success rate. If you take away those 2 extra tackles, basically the same. So he only gave away 4 penalties, which is kind of the downpour of that. But at that point, the All Blacks were already frazzled. So Crema or Mitre? That's what I want to know. Who had the better game? So Huller, I'm going to go to you first. Who do you think had the better game?
That's a tough one. I think if we're going to go for disrupting play in regards to like while in play, making better decisions that caused or frazzled the All Blacks more, you'd have to go Crema. For me, for mine, I think he was just on point, man. And that's what you want. That's what you need from a Lucy. For me, I really enjoyed just how he read the play. He trusted his inside when defending. He trusted his inside guy. He wasn't shooting, but if he did shoot, he made the tackle. Do you know what I mean? He slowed the ball down. It was behind the advantage line. So he just played a real smart game, bro. And to be honest, both of them outplayed the All Blacks loose forwards, hands down. And that in itself is remarkable from a completely non-biased point of view. And I think Crema did more of the damage in just being the faster player, the smarter player, and just really just doing his job, bro. That's what he did. He did his job and got on with it.
Yeah, James, what are your thoughts?
Mate, I agree that the RG back row outplayed the All Blacks back row by some margin. The 6 and the 7, Mitre and Crema, were both outstanding. The number 8, I forget his name, but he was pretty handy too.
Yeah, he was good.
The 6, 7, and 8 all look the same. They all have this same build. They're all massive. They're all quite tall.
They're scary, bro. That they're all the same size.
Yeah, yeah. And so, but they're all very athletic, and they all had a huge work rate, and they were all fresh in the last 15 minutes. So they've obviously been. They haven't played a test match in 400 days, but they've been in the gym and they've been working very hard on their conditioning.
Yeah, they finished the beat test. That's how fit they are. They finished the beat test.
Is that right?
That's the rumor I read online. When they're still running, like sprinting ruck to ruck in the 75th minute, you're finishing the beat test in my eyes.
And that's probably a double XL jersey, and he's absolutely popping out of it. And all 3 of the back rows contributed a heap to the scrum. I don't know if we're going to talk about the scrum later, but I think the Pumas.
We can talk about it now if you want. What do you want to talk about?
But I think if you've got that kind of back 3, that kind of back row, you've got that much extra weight. You could see they were all kind of leaning into every scrum. And every time that as kind of the All Blacks popped or dropped and were penalised, you saw the entire back row contributing.
Well, one thing that was really awesome is you saw in one of the scrums is that I think it was Crema. He got penalised for reaching the halfback while he was still attached to scrum. And although his shoulder wasn't right on, he was leaning so far forward that he was basically just willing himself towards the halfback. And then he just turned to the referee and was like, what the hell am I supposed to do? Not touch him because he's like this far away from me? It was horrendous.
In the Southern Hemisphere, the sevens certainly have a bit of a habit of kind of just leaning on a scrum and trying to get off it as quick as possible. Where in the Northern Hemisphere and the Argentinian, South American kind of style, you pick 3 back rowers who can scrum, and you notice that they've all kind of got a priority of pushing rather than getting off to whack or
that
poach.
Perfect diamond shape. You're actually getting 8 people in. That was the one thing I did notice on the scrums too, James and Tej, is when you saw the scrum set, you actually saw when the dip came, you actually saw everything come in. So it was like that was sort of wider at the front. And then as soon as that diamond shape kicked in, you saw the 8, 6, 7, they move in. And the moment that happened, New Zealand were on the back foot straight away. There's nothing that your front row and your locks can do against that unless your 6, 7, 8 are bound and are actually in there. And I actually saw Crema too. He changed his, depending on if it was their feet or not, you'd see him change his grip, and just seeing that overarm or underarm, they're being told, this is what we're doing. There's calls. They know if they're shooting, they know if they're not. And that's the first time I've seen in a very long time a 6-7-8 combination in, pushing 100% in the scrum, but also smart enough to change their grips, knowing that they're either shooting or we're all pushing. And that was to their advantage the whole 80 minutes. The All Black scrum never looked like getting back on top, ever. And that's what Joel Moody.
With that in mind, let's just with Moody at the front, that's saying a lot. But let's switch gears and we'll talk about the All Blacks. I don't really want to go into too much detail myself because I want to see you guys give your reactions. But just quickly, like I'm gonna say, I'm very annoyed and disappointed by this performance, as you would assume. There were so many handling areas, so many costly mistakes. Discipline was absolutely freaking woeful. And yeah, you can make an argument that the Pumas frazzled the All Blacks. Doesn't matter. They should have been prepared for this test. They should have known that they would have come out swinging, especially with 402 days. But the thing that threw me over the edge, and I was so pissed at halftime, was Richie Mo'unga. And I know he's our best option at 10, in my opinion. Some people have been making the argument that he isn't as experienced as Sanchez or he hasn't been around the international game as long. But we had a chance to rein in the score. It was 13-3 or whatever the score was, and we had a chance to kick it to the 5-metre line out drive. We get a little bit of the chip back. But Richie Mo'unga kicked the ball dead when he kicked for the line. Friggin' stupid. And I don't care if it's a high pressure moment or if you're frazzled. That's junior rugby stuff. You kick it out. I don't care. That's just my opinion. I understand you're on the back foot and you're trying to set up your team for the best possible option, but all season long, Super Rugby AU and Aotearoa included, I've been seeing 10s try to bite more off than they can chew all friggin' year, and it just drove me insane. But I'm going to leave it at that before I get too passionate about this. I want to give you guys an opportunity to talk about it. James, what do you think was the biggest contributor to this All Blacks loss?
I think there was a little bit of panic set in. So they probably started the game flat. Being flat and being out enthused, that happened for probably the first 70 minutes. And one of the big kind of signs that you're not as up for it as the opposition is who gets to the loose balls and who wins the 50-50s on the ground. And I think Argentina won every 50-50 loose ball on the ground until I think Whitelock got one in the 78th minute. So if without getting too technical about anything, if one team is winning all of the balls on the ground and all the 50-50s, it's going to show in other areas of the game that one side is more up for it and the other side's flat. I think once the game and the scoreboard started getting away from the All Blacks a little bit, you started seeing little bits of panic and you started seeing some of the basic skill executions that the All Blacks do better than anyone else started to fall away, snatching at passes, putting easy balls down, passes spraying, the Mo'unga kick, just trying to bite off too much. There was a whole lot of little signs that a little bit of tension, a little bit of panic off the back of a flat start and watching the opposition keep the scoreboard ticking over.
Hello, what are your thoughts?
Well,
when it starts off like that, I'm excited. Let's go.
I vented my worry about the All Blacks at the beginning of the Bledisloe. It starts with seeing Dan Coles at the front of a haka. He finishes the haka, walks off straight away. And by that's just the mental state of how passionate he is or understands the cultural relevance of that jersey and the haka. So I think accumulatively, the last 5 weeks, we've seen the mindset and the culture change in the All Blacks. I think they came out flat against the Wallabies. They draw. They're back at home. The comfort of their home, pull their heads in, they win big. Next game, they win again. But then again, they slip back into comfortable mode. They get chewed up and spat out by a Wallaby team. And it happens again. It happened again on the weekend. All the things that James talks about, the panicking, the misdirection of whatever their tactics was, that just comes down to an inconsistent mental capacity to understand what the heck they're about and what they're doing. I think if a team as a whole understand that the jersey comes first, then you understand this is the play. This is it. You don't get panicked. You trust the process. You trust what's being told by your coach. what's being led onto the field. But this also comes down to leadership on the field, which has lacked the last 2 weeks. Regardless of how good Sam Cane plays, I just don't feel as though he has the leadership capacity at this level week in, week out to be able to make the right choices and the right decisions. With no disrespect to Sam Cane, mate, you're the captain. You make the decision. You go with what's happening. Like every good captain, a coach and a captain, they have those chats, and the vice captain or the leadership team. I saw Sam Whitelock questioning Gardner. Was it Gardner on the road? Yeah, Gardner was Gardner. Questioning him more purely to slow play down, knowing that the team were going backwards, than Sam Cane. I saw Whitelock consistently when Argentina were coming into a line out, just slow it down a little bit, make sure that the Gardner reset the line. These are all these little things that you need from a leader to make sure that your team actually can take that 2 or 3 deep breaths, get back in, click back on, and let's go. And I think that shift in culture and lack of leadership, and we're seeing it just as we saw in week 1. This isn't new. We saw this when they played the Wallabies in game 1 of the Bledisloe Cup. They're just not mentally fit. They're not there. They're not being led around the field by someone that's willing to die by the sword. Do you know what I mean? And for me, that was my biggest frustration. If I'm Sam Cane, I'm going over to Rich and being going, mate, pull your shit in. Let's go, bro. Like, kick the ball out. I don't care if it's 10 meters, 5 meters, or 30, 40, 50 meters. We need you to calm down, do what you want to do. You know what I mean? We saw nothing from the back line. For me, Caleb Clark was the only one that came in, Whitelock, the only 2 players that whole game, and I'll give Joel Moody 50 minutes of it, where they just played as whenever they got the ball, wherever they defended, they were really putting 100% in. Everyone else wasn't, man. And for, like, just, being a real avid All Blacks fan and seeing I've seen them lose games and still put in 110%. I'm not seeing this team put in 100. Even in those wins, they weren't wins because they were playing at 100%. They were wins because they switched on for 45, 50 minutes, and that was enough. And they're getting found out now, and rightly deserved as well. They need to be found out, because if this was a World Cup year, I'd be cussing every second word right now.
You're only cussing every third
exactly,
word now,
so
yeah. All right, we'll round out with the chat, because I think we covered a lot of bases there, but we'll round it out with Shannon Frizzell. So I've been on record saying that I think he's a great player. I did. But I didn't think he was right for this All Blacks team. So I will say a lot of people are making a big deal out of the scuffle that happened early on and saying that threw him. But I don't really believe that, because when you look at the statistics, he still made 85% of his tackles on the weekend and averaged around 1.5 meters each carry against a very great defensive line. So I think when you factor that in, he still did a pretty good job. But Hulla, like I said, you know this. I've been on the Akira Ioane, Luke Jacobson train, Dalton Popoli train for a while, saying the ABs, they just need someone who's an enforcer, who's got a bit of mongrel in them and just wreck shit. Like, it's just straight simple as that. You've got Hoskins Satutu, who's a great player, who needs game time and time to develop, but I don't think he's what they need in that starting 6 jersey for our last test match, especially against the Pumas. So, James, I'll come to you first. Do you think the All Blacks need to have a look at putting someone in like Akira, or someone who has more dominance? Because you look at Akira's performance in the 28 minutes he played, he was quite dominant. Or is Frizzell the right fit for this number 6 jersey?
Frizzell was the form 6 during the Super Rugby, wasn't he?
Yeah, that's what people say. No, I don't say that, but yeah, a lot of people said that.
Yeah, so you kind of caught between trying to reward form at provincial level and deciding what's going to win you a test match. But I don't think the All Blacks were getting go forward and weren't bending the line on Saturday or against the Wallabies really a week ago. Mm-hmm. And so you got to look at the balance of your back row. Sam Cane gives you a little bit of everything. He gives you a heap of defence. He gives you poach work, and he's very good at the carry. So out of the 6 and 8, you've got to kind of look at what do you get out of your line out, and who's going to whack guys and intimidate, and who's going to bend the line with the ball. So yeah, you might be right. Awani might be a better option.
Yeah. Hulla?
Yeah, man, look, I was really shocked Ioane didn't get the shot on the weekend. I thought in that 28 minutes, he really was possibly the best All Black on the field. I've been a big Ioane fan for a while. And, even going back on that mental capacity to be able to play at this level, I think that he's had to fight heaps of mental demons, and he really deserved his spot when he played against the Wallabies, and I thought he played great. Coming into the season, I was definitely on the Frizzell train. But he just hasn't hit the mark for me at all in the last 5 games. He's played solid, but I mean that as a 7 out of 10. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Ioane start with Frizzell dropped and Papali'i coming off the bench. And I think from like James was saying, from a point of view of what you're going to get from your 8 and 6, I think. Satotu off the bench will really bolster their line out for the second portion of the game, and you can chuck him in at 8. Leave Artie Severe on, who can play 80 minutes, and throw him in at 6 if you needed to.
Artie can play friggin' 150 minutes, so you can put him on. You can leave him there. So
it'll be interesting because I'm on the Ioane train now. I think he deserves his shot. I think it'd be interesting to see him play physical. When he was during the Super Rugby season. I was really quite impressed with his physicality. He's leaned out heaps, but still kept quite a bit of muscle. And his carries were really good. Him and Satotu make a really good combination as well. So, I wouldn't be surprised either. I think Sam Kane's taken a few too many head knocks. So I wouldn't be surprised to see even if they start Ioane, Severe, and Kane. And you'll see Kane come off sort of that 50-minute mark. And then they'll bring on, they could bring on Papali'i if he's on the bench, or Satotu to come in, and they'll just do a quick reshuffle. But they need to do something against the Puma side like this, and they need to have go forward. And I think Frizzell, just for me at the moment, just isn't really getting that go forward that he had like he did during the Super Rugby season.
All right, boys. Well, you know what time it is. It's time to talk about the refereeing, our favourite topic. So we've credited Angus Gardner on this show many times for being Australia's #1 ref, but a lot of All Blacks fans obviously very unhappy with him this week. I'm going to try and stay impartial because I want to show both sides here, because I think he had a very tough job on the weekend, and I don't think anybody can disagree with that. There was a lot of scrappy play everywhere, constant fights going on everywhere, like that stupid Dane Coles slap, and the other variables. He was still able to make some great calls and control the game as well as he could. But on the other hand, he's copping a lot of heat for some controversial calls. Like, personally, I believe the Geordie Barrett charge down, I believe that shouldn't have been called because I thought he was already in the motion, but that's just me. But we spoke about it a few weeks ago where a lot of these refs, they're just in a lose-lose situation. No matter what they do, they cop a lot of heat for something they did. So, Hulla, when you factor in all the variables, what did you think of Gardner's performance? And let's be impartial here. And I'm gonna warn you.
Yeah. Look, I'm thinking before I am speaking. This is a miracle. You're welcome, James and TJ. Look, I think, in all honesty, that he's following the letter of the law. I also think, though, he had a bit of help in his ear with some of those calls. And I think some of those calls were wrong. But he's got a job to do. He trusts the 2 guys that are with him on the field. And I think he did the best job that he could have done. Having said that, I do think there needs to be a little bit more consideration into some of those penalties. Especially the Geordie Barrett one just threw me. For mine, I was just like, mate, just look at, like, if we're going to review, like, and this is where I'm starting to get a little bit frustrated, is if they're going to call a tackle last week, 2 or 3 phases
to be reviewed by the TMO,
then why wasn't that reviewed? And why wasn't that overturned? And that was what we're talking about, right? The process, like James said in the last episode, there's protocols and processes in place, and they're just following those processes. But these are the inconsistencies that are starting to frustrate. But, because obviously it's happened to the All Blacks twice in a row now, with some impartial, let's call them, calls, those inconsistencies could be greater than what I think is inconsistent. But overall, dude, I honestly feel that he was letting them play. I thought he did a better job this week than Nick Berry did last week. I will say that.
I'll pay that.
So, it is what it is, bro. But for all the heat that Gardner gets, I actually like, it's like even the commentators were saying, we don't need to hear from him. He doesn't need to be, that doesn't need to give the captains a lecture. I'm like, well, mate, he does, because we're 10 minutes in and there's already been a couple of fisticuffs. Do you know what I mean? Like,
it's UFC. Yeah.
Someone's got to say something. It's going to be 13 versus 13 again. So, look, I thought, I'll bet some of the calls were dodgy, and I don't think they were his calls. I definitely think they came from his ARs. But, he's got to trust them. And I just would like to see some consistency with the review being placed, with the reviews, because I definitely think that the All Blacks were at a disadvantage one or two times during that game that were just completely wrong. Not even close to being right. Just completely and utterly wrong.
Yeah. James, all right, you got final words. What do you got?
Okay. I didn't think he was terrible. I thought there was a couple of – sometimes a referee can have like a very high percentage of accuracy, and if they get two or three things wrong only, but those are influential, that can sometimes be a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So I think his overall accuracy was pretty good. He got a couple of big calls probably wrong. In terms of his management, like I love the fact that he penalised the All Black for slapping a face.
Yeah,
I've seen a bit of that in the All Blacks in the last month that I haven't seen in the last 5 years.
Culture, bro.
Just culture. Cheap shots after the whistle. I saw Captain Sam Cane do it and strike one of the Wallabies in the head on the ground 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I saw that.
If as a referee, if you don't show the players that you've seen it and you've dealt with it, then the game gets out of hand and you have like low-level foul play. Referees don't want to blow that as a penalty, but if you don't deal with it, the teams on the field would take it into their own hands and the game gets out of control.
Just domino.
So I thought I kind of agree with the commentators. I don't like to hear him like lecture and be patronising to the players. That made me cringe a little bit. He talked too much and he was a little bit patronising. But I thought he managed that foul play well. And I thought in the second half, the All Blacks, in the last 15 or 20 minutes, he really opened up the ruck by penalising the Pumas. Anytime there was a Puma tackler that slowed down All Black ball, he was penalising it immediately, and he was making sure that the Pumas couldn't kind of defend a lead by shutting the game down and taking the rugby out of play. So there's a couple of subtle things, especially at the breakdown, that I thought he did very well. And I think if you have a look at the penalty count, I think you'll find that the All Blacks won the penalty count. It was just kind of a couple of – you might be able to bring that stat up, but it was a couple of crucial moments that I thought he probably got a few calls wrong.
Yeah. No. All right. Well, that one's in the books, and we'll leave it there. But looking forward to the future. So let's jump into our predictions before we get into our bonus point segment. So we've got 4 games, like I said, in the Mitre 10 Cup, and I'm coming to you guys. So it's just quick one-word answers. And we'll go James number 1 and then Hulla number 2 every time. So Otago versus Northland. Who you got, James?
I have Northland.
Hulla?
Yep, Northland.
Northland for me too. Yep, that's a landslide. Hawke's Bay, Taranaki.
I've got Hawke's Bay.
Hawke's Bay. We're on par, boys. Let's keep going. So Tasman, Bay of Plenty.
I've got Bay of Plenty. I think this is going to be very close, but I've got Bay of Plenty by 2 points.
Yeah, man, I got Bob City too, bro.
Oh, I thought I was going to be the only one because everyone was like, oh, Marco's reigning champions. Oh, okay, yeah, I'm backing my boy Matty G. I have to. Last one, Auckland, Waikato. James, don't disappoint me.
Auckland.
Oh,
man.
I know, I've been burnt by Waikato a few weeks in a row.
How do you think we feel? How do you think we feel, James?
Hello, who you got?
Dude, man, look, my heart says Waikato. I think Auckland are going to take it, though.
I'm not going with my head this week. I'm going Waikato. Come on, I've got to stay consistent, boys. All right. Well, the most important one is I know who you're bloody picking, James, for this one. Wallabies, Argentina. Who you got?
I'm actually going to pick the Wallabies. And I'll tell
No
you,
way!
I like how you delivered that. I'm actually going to pick the Wallabies.
Like it was a big surprise or something.
I think you'll find the teams that beat the All Blacks have got a terrible record the week after.
Okay.
So if you go back to the World Cup semi-final, England played their grand final against the All Blacks and beat them in the semi-final and laid an egg the following week. And I think I've seen stats reported on the week after teams beat the All Blacks is often a fair letdown. Now I'm hoping for that. Nothing I saw on Saturday suggested that they'd let down and that they'll be easy beats. But I think Australia have had a week off. Bodies should be fresh. And there's been a week to basically analyse and have a look at what the Pumas do. And I've got a fair bit of faith in Rennie. So I'm saying the Wallabies by 5 points.
Hala?
Yeah, everything James has said, I think Wallabies as well. But I will say I think they're going to win rather convincingly. I think they could pull away sort of the last 15, 20. So I'm going Wallabies by under 17. So 13 to 20, I think.
Well, shit. Okay, so the only team that I picked against everyone else was Waikato because I'm picking Wallabies as well. So if Waikato shit the bed, I'm screwed. It's not going to be good. But yeah, we'll see how that goes. Super excited for this weekend of rugby because it's going to be all high quality. But it's called the bonus point for a reason. And today's episode is all about the state of the women's game here in the US. Like I said earlier in the show, it's Women's Rugby Week here, and this week the USA Rugby team have their Stars and Stripes games. But I'm not going to talk this time. I'm going to hand it off to James. James, you're going to lead us in our bonus point segment today. What do you got for us?
Okay, we're going to talk about the USA women's national team as potentially a dominant force over the next 20 or 30 years. So being women, USA Women's in Rugby Week, and myself and you both have, and Hala, have all done some coaching at the grassroots level in the USA, and we've all had a pretty good look at the lay of the land. I'd probably make the case that there's enough in place here for the USA women to probably win a World Cup in 5 years and probably win every second World Cup and really dominate.
Okay. All right. Well, I definitely don't disagree with that because it's written. It's you see it in the USA men's side because they've gone from if you use sevens for example, they've gone from middle of the pack to number 2 in the nation. Is because they've pumped resources in. They've developed a pathway program. They've made collegiate rugby a very big, impactful pathway for the national team. But the one thing that I feel that the USA is lacking, and I've been on multiple occasions saying this, is that there's not a pathway program for those fringe players or for other players in that grassroots program. So, Hala, you know from me talking about it a lot at training, is that there's no provincial representative rugby. There's nothing like that where you can have a player who potentially has talent outside of college and then can go and play a couple of years of rugby for a WPL program or for a club program and then get funneled into the national team. It's something where I've always seen that if you play well in college or you have talent in college, people pluck you from there, or they go cross code and they go to other sports and they pick you out of that and then they go into the national team. If you have talent and you're a club player, it's quite rare that you'll get a scout coming to a game and coming to watch that and going, okay, let's pick this person out and bring him to a camp. It happens, but it doesn't happen as often as you have New Zealand, Australia, England, those countries where they have a pathway. You have clubs, you have provincial sides or representative sides. Then you are able to be invited to those camps and then you get your name on the board. So I think it's definitely possible. I know Eloise Bidewell, I believe is her name, who is in charge of the high performance pathway. I believe she's making a presentation this week about the pathway of the USA women's and everything that's going into that. So I'm super excited to see what her plans are. But until we get, I would say, a representative side or some way that we can funnel players in from the club program or grassroots, not just college, I think we'll still remain second tier. So, Hala, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I'm the rookie, aren't I? I've really only been involved for grassroots for 6-7 months. So I can definitely say, just from coming from Australia and New Zealand, seeing the benefits of that grassroots program, and seeing what happens with women. I mean, Queensland halfback, backup halfback, Digiono. She's from Japan. She came here and she really, moved here with limited rugby background, and then all of a sudden she's in the Australian squad. Do you know what I mean? At halfback against Iliseva, Badabasang, and Kobe, who are undoubtedly probably some of the best halfbacks women's rugby I've ever seen. So I can definitely see the point with my time that there are players, female players, that probably should be given at least a shot to at least trial or have some sort of, maybe a week in a camp somewhere just to see how they go against the other elite players. But the collegiate program, though, is pretty impressive. And I definitely can see USA with what they like. Let's be honest, they've had limited resources, haven't they? Comparatively to even like the Fijiana have more resources than USA women's rugby,
which is saying a lot.
100%,
which is saying a lot.
So from the information I've seen and being a part of it, I can definitely I agree with James. I can definitely see that collegiate program will be imperative in the USA team, if not becoming a dominant force in women's rugby. I can't not see it. The men's, comparing it sort of to the men's is sort of different, because on the men's side you're dealing with, second tier teams are still they're still, all they need a bit of funding and they're good too. I think watching the USA women's team, they're on par. Undoubtedly, it's just.
I will say when I saw them in the summer series when down in San Diego, when they played against New Zealand, England, Canada, those teams, when they came over and played, they put up a great competitive fight against a lot of teams, especially against the Black Ferns. So in no way, shape, or form am I sitting there going, "There's no way they can ever take out a World Cup or anything like that." It's just, I feel that it can be done so much better. And James, I know you've attended a lot of camps and you have a lot of insight and knowledge into this. Do you think that would make a really contributing factor, or do you think that basically fact that they have so much that they can pump into the collegiate programs, they're growing so fast, there's so much intrigue, do you reckon that's enough?
I think the college system and the NCAA varsity system is the big competitive advantage USA has over every other program. Mm-hmm. So I kind of look at women's soccer. Women's soccer didn't have a big tradition of participation in America until about 20 or 30 years ago, 40 years ago. In 1981, women's soccer became an NCAA varsity sport. Participation picked up, resources pumped into the sport. 1991 was the first Women's Soccer World Cup, and USA won it, and they've won 4 of the 8 World Cups since then. And that's simply based on the fact that there's close to 30,000 women in NCAA varsity soccer programs who are training in a full-time environment with professional coaches, S&C, medical, all the kind of attributes of a high-performance environment. And now women's rugby is an emerging NCAA sport. We're already seeing every year more universities put rugby on as a women's varsity sport. And I think the more that picks up, if there's continued growth that way, you're going to see more and more young female athletes between 18 and 22 entering a full-time rugby environment. And that's probably something that the other tier 1 countries can't really compete with, maybe outside of England or maybe Canada.
Do you think that program, right? Let's just say they do the 4 years. Do you think that a college team at that level could compete with an Australian team or a Kiwi club team?
Probably not, but there's hundreds of those programs all over the country.
Okay.
Yeah. So we forget about the scale of the US and the university system, where I think there's 900 universities that have rugby clubs in the States. So an individual American collegiate women's program might be absolutely touched up by a they might get smashed by a Kiwi club side. But if there's only 15 serious Kiwi club sides kind of in each island, I'm just guessing numbers here, I think the sheer scale of the numbers of participation means in the States you're pushing some elite freakish athletes up to the top. And as long as they're good at getting good competition at the top there, I think kind of the size, the numbers, and the fact that they're going through 4 or 5 years of a high-performance environment means that at some stage those advantages will start to show in the field.
Would it be fair to say then you had conference teams, maybe like, your Central or your Midwest, South, East, West, they then would be very competitive to a club team, like a Randwick or Sydney.
I feel that. Yeah. I still think that I think because it's a tier 1 sport in Australia and New Zealand, I think that they still might get a touch up, but it'll still definitely be a lot more competitive. And like you said, James, it's a numbers game there. You've got so many to choose from. And it's inevitable.
Do you know what's really interesting to me hearing you speak, James, is like we're talking about, on a cultural level, like you play rugby if you're a boy or girl, from your 5 to 6, in Australia or New Zealand. So it'd be really interesting to see this program at work at full capacity, because that changes the game inevitably worldwide, knowing that you can have someone that's never played rugby, but is somewhat of a mild athlete, if that, and then you give them 4 years of this, and you're turning out, players that can then go, they're going from collegiate program. Maybe they're not that good that they miss out on an Eagles or whatever it is, but then they can go down to New Zealand and get paid to play rugby. Do you know what I mean? This changes the environment of professional women's sport, and I think for the better. And it also puts the rest of the world on notice, especially Australia and New Zealand, where women in rugby or women in sport in general it's just not that big at the moment, and it needs to be shined. So for me, that's the big, I'm super interested to see this play out, because like James, you said, if this is anything like what happened with the women's soccer, you only got to see they're all professional sportswomen getting paid proper money because they're really good at their job.
The US women's soccer team earn the same money as the US men's soccer team.
That's beautiful. Yeah. That's amazing.
That was a landmark. And there's an interesting debate that we probably don't have time for in this show. The idea is that the women, like female athletes and rugby players all over the planet, are amateurs and are doing a 9-to-5 job. Because that's the case, their skills in certain levels lag behind the professional male players. So it's a chicken and egg situation where perhaps if we ever came up with enough money to pay women's rugby players equally, maybe they train in a full-time environment. The gap between professional elite men and professional elite women closes.
100%.
But again, it's money rules elite sport. So this is all a hypothetical at the moment, but it's a scary thought. If we talked about the women's college system, if that ever continued to grow, and there was a bit of high school women's rugby underpinning it, where they play for 2 or 3 years before college, and then there's a better club system to feed them into if they're not elite when they graduate. You've now got kind of a pathway, which TJ pointed out was missing a bit in the States.
Well, I think that with the pathway, I think one thing I will have to take into consideration is that we've got Major League Rugby now. So this is definitely something where all these teams can do, just like they do in Australia and New Zealand, they can now start academies. So it's been happening in some places, not everywhere. But I think, like you said, with the amount of potential that it has there, and with the college teams funneling into it and showing how much interest there is in these collegiate programs, definitely a possibility for those academies to sprout up, and then we can start getting some funding into it. So yeah, it'll be awesome.
And there'll be James. Anything you guys want? James there at the top of the collegiate coaching poll. I told you.
Well, I'm saying USA Rugby hired this man.
I got on early.
Yeah, man, you deserve it, G. We're still gonna get free tickets to Eagles games, though, right? I'm just. Look, if it's free, it's for me, bro.
That's a silly. That's a silly question. James, anything you want to say just to round out this conversation?
No, mate. Just I'd give a shout out to the Cal Poly women's program.
There you go.
Women's Rugby Week. They started 4 years ago out of absolutely nothing. Took some pretty brutal losses. TJ, you're on the sideline with a clipboard on a few of those.
Oh, it was beautiful.
But the girls kind of within 4 years developed from a team of easy beats, mostly new to rugby, to undefeated conference champions in 4 years and doing great things for Cal Poly Rugby.
I will say, the one victory I saw out of that was, like we said, we had limited resources from that women's program, limited, I guess, interest as well. We did have some players, but we ended up winning that year. I think it was our first actual real win was a bowl win in a sevens competition. I was sitting there going, to go from that in 1 year is just phenomenal. So leave it at that on a happy note. Yeah. Shout out to Cal Poly and shout out to Santa Monica women's program. Obviously, me and Hull have a big stake.
I still can't do it,
but I still can't do it either. Yeah, I'm not too high pitched for me. But we'll leave it at that, boys. Great episode. Thank you so much for joining us again. It was beautiful to talk about the RG. Super excited for this Mitre 10 Cup semi-finals to come on and let's go Waikato and the Wallabies, eh? So I don't have to do any.
Never thought I'd say this. Let's go Wallabies.
Bro,
that sounds weird.
Yeah, I know. Let's go Wallabies.
James, I don't like it.
Just to round it out, women's Rugby Week, like we said, Stars and Stripes match on Free on Flow Rugby, 18th and the 21st. So definitely check those out. Support women's rugby. But we'll leave it there. You guys have an awesome week,
guys.
Happy Tuesday. Thank you very much for joining us on the Bonus Point Podcast.
Pleasure, boys.